The epic roller coaster of life. Episode 4. 2019 would be my 9th winter season in New Zealand. It felt more and more like home every time I arrived. The beauty of the southern lakes in the South Island has few competitors. It is truly a paradise on earth when matched with the phenomenal sunrises and sunsets. Illuminated clouds like enormous and constantly changing lighting installations. Those skies and landscapes left me in awe on a daily basis. Every year I had collected images on a variety of cameras and phones, resolution improving gradually as time went on. But every rectangle of pixelated colors in my collection does not compare to the atmosphere in the sky framed by the mountains in the South Island. For the last 5 years I'd had the utter privilege of being colleagues with a selection of the most experienced and talented ski instructors, examiners, and national demonstrators in the world. Not forgetting a couple of legendary snowboarders to boot. I can't express enough gratitude towards my employers/mentors, Dean Hunter and Garrett Shore, and in fact the whole Rookie Academy team, for the opportunity to work alongside them and for the insights they have shared. The guidance offered by these trainers allowed me to grow in understanding and develop confidence in my knowledge far beyond my expectation. My insight and perception of snowboarding in many ways is due to those great skiers. There's an honor in sharing a uniform with these colleagues, which can scarcely be summed up here. After this brief opening day warm-up, we would return to business on one of the steepest beginner runs in the world, to work with a new crop of snowboarders who wish to become instructors, laying down the fundamentals of stance, balance, and movement patterns while closely observing their existing skill. The procedure for getting intermediate recreational snowboarders to succeed in passing the Level 2 instructor cert can be challenging. There's a lot of work to be done on writing, demonstrations, not to mention teaching techniques and material. It necessitates a rapid evolution of skills for most trainees, from beginner turns through to introduction to freestyle, off-piste riding, and carving. There is always another component to refine and develop during the short winter. Along the way, there is also the pleasure of sharing the time with an incredibly varied group of people in the splendid environment at Treblecone. What a pleasure it has been to host these characters and share the magic of the mountain and the wisdom passed down from trainer to student over the decades, like my trainer had trained me and his trained him. More on that later. There were a number of special days in the 2019 winter. An excursion to Mount Hutt a few hours north for some personal riding was set to inspire me strongly for the coming years. An influential Japanese snowboarder was in town. Makoto Kuroki is widely known in the land of the rising sun. I had only wanted to ride with him to detach briefly from snowboard instruction and enjoy his positive nature. However, within the first run, his riding had provided the answer to my most frustrating dilemma regarding technique in recent times. I maintain that there are no wrong movements in snowboarding. Our responsibility as instructors is to observe and understand, to define, justify, describe, and demonstrate what we do. This is the difference between a great instructor and an egotistical narcissist. I was enlightened and unburdened, smiling and laughing while riding with Makoto and his wife Akari. These people understand better than most what snowboarding is all about. Back at TC, a former colleague, Dan Kabi, was visiting from Australia with the Jones snowboard distribution crew and snowboarder of note, JF Pelchat. This was another rare moment to return to the essence of the sport. Leading them up to the summit and into the Mototapu chutes to experience TC was a privilege. Wind-affected powder, the sun, and the incredible terrain there are a perfect recipe. These guys were frothing to be here, just like I was. In the previous decade, Treblecone had shaped me. I had gone from an enthusiastic but tentative rookie trainee to being an experienced senior instructor and rookie trainer. Now I was riding with my friend Dank, who had been there at my side when I first was hired as an instructor here in 2011, and with a guy I had watched on video in 1997, dreaming of a future filled with turns and days exactly like this. Looking back now, I recognize how magnificent and idyllic these moments actually were, even if they are only a tiny fraction of my memories shredding the mountain. The following day was the annual banked slalom at Treblecone, always one of the most exhilarating single runs of the season. The short course is set in one of the many natural half-pipes at TC, a series of hairpin turns supported by the steep banks, like a mini bordercross or winding mountain bike berm track. The course is often challenging, and many strong riders come unstuck, occasionally in spectacular fashion. Heart beating strongly and adrenaline coursing, I rode consistently and ended up 4th in the Masters category. My colleague, the local powerhouse Richie Johnson, absolutely devastated the competition again, winning by 2 seconds, continuing to literally carve his legend from the mountain. In 2019, I also had the pleasure of resitting the SPI&Z Trainers Exam, or Level 4. Seeing a few friends succeed this year already, I was quite determined to bring my A game. I was granted a pass certificate, but the most important reward for me was achieving this in honour of my peers. Dan Burton, Richie Johnson were 2 of my original snowboard trainers, and Jim Hart, who mentored me as a trainer. In recent seasons, I had the honour of becoming colleagues and good friends with all 3. Celebrating that night with those guys was a highlight of my professional snowboarding career, and unexpectedly, it was also a watershed moment for my involvement with snowboarding in New Zealand. After the success of some of our trainees in pursuit of Level 2, there was a short period of work remaining for the season. At this time, we have the chance to explore things in a more natural way and take more simple pleasure in riding and the mountain. Now we could share some of the unspeakable truths and non-system knowledge, the fun stuff, the real stuff. Too often a twin-shape freestyle-derived board is used for the days of education and guidance rather than a specialist tool. I love riding different boards and exploring their characteristics, and this season had been no different. So before they went home, I insisted my trainees experience my current favourite setup, extra wide and stiff camber. Beaming smiles were obviously the immediate outcome. Closing day comes but once a season, and surely it is one of the most bizarre sights to behold for any unaccustomed onlooker. I rolled up the hill with 2 good Kiwi boys and set up in the corner of the top car park for a barbecue breakfast. I'd already brought my gear off the hill, so it was time to break out the borrowed skis and boots. Chasing Harry around on skis was challenging to say the least, but fully hilarious. It was also a fine moment to share the first chairlift ride of 2019 with my housemate Vince, who had been nursing a fractured vertebrae in his neck since before the winter started. Unbeknownst, this run on skis would be my final slide at Treblecone. True, even as I sit recollecting this 4 years later. Who knows if there will ever be a reason to return, and even if there is, I'm sure things will never return to the way they were, thanks to all of those who made it such a very special place. By the end of September, most seasonal residents have already left Wanaka, and it was time for me too. I made a short visit to the west coast and the mighty Tasman Sea. And the town I didn't build, before making my way past Mount Hutt again to lay my final arcs of the southern winter. Farewells said, it was time for the journey and life to continue, flying out of Christchurch and firstly back to the north of Japan.